If you do stay with us now, we are going to head away from trade and look now towards the Middle East. At least 98 Palestinians, including 51 aid seekers, have reportedly been killed in Israeli attacks across Gaza over the past 24 hours. That's according to the Gaza Health Ministry. The ministry also reported 603 people were injured during the same period. Additionally, 4 people died from starvation in the last day. That again, according to reports on the ground, bringing the reported hunger-related death toll to 197, including 96 children. Meanwhile, the Egyptian government has stated that it continues efforts to deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza amid ongoing shortages caused by aid blockades. An aid convoy carrying 1.5 million tonnes of food and supplies is en route to the territory, coordinated by the Egyptian government and civil society. However, many trucks have been blocked at the Israeli-controlled Kerem Shalom crossing, with only a limited number allowed through. The Rafah crossing between Egypt and Gaza remains open only for passenger movement, restricting goods delivery. Well, Ross, thank you for staying with us on this topic. A couple of separate points that we need to discuss. Let's first look at this aid delivery. 1.5 million tonnes of aid, Egypt says, is en route to the enclave, but claims that aid is trickling into Gaza. We know there's been so much global discussion around aid distribution, with Israel saying that they're making efforts to improve the situation with aid distribution, not just with the GHF, but also with periods in which fighting is stalling, along with other methods. How key a process is this now in the midst of accusations from several NGOs, the UN as well, and other leaders talking about the situation in Gaza, the humanitarian situation? How important is it that these aid issues are resolved for the people of Gaza and potentially for Israel's place and saving face on the geopolitical standing?
It's an opening. It's better than nothing, as far as bringing in more food aid. Obviously, civilians are in desperate need of food aid. I don't think anyone could reasonably dispute that. But yes, Israel is only letting in small amounts, and the amounts that get in are susceptible to violence. They're susceptible to being hijacked. There's still fighting between Israel and Hamas in several places within the Gaza Strip. But there's clearly a willingness by Israel, and I do think it's in response to the enormous amount of international criticism and negative media coverage in recent weeks, that there is a willingness on the part of the Netanyahu government to allow more aid in. And to the credit of the Egyptian government, they're willing to participate. They could have just said, we want nothing to do with Israel, and we want nothing to do with trying to get aid into a dangerous situation. But they're willing to participate, just like Egypt's been part of the interlocutors, along with the U.S. and Qatar, in trying to broker a ceasefire. So I think the Egyptians do deserve some credit. But one thing to watch here will be, how tough are they going to get with the Israelis? Are they going to demand that Israel allow ever-increasing amounts of aid in? And how would Israel react to such a demand from Egypt? I think that's something to watch in the coming days.
Yes, Ross, and I do want to caveat that these figures are coming out of Gaza. Of course, reporting within the Gaza Strip is difficult. There are restrictions on international journalists entering the enclave. But as I read these out, I do just want to caveat that this is coming from Hamas-run ministries. But Ross, the numbers that we have: 98 Palestinians killed in the last 24 hours, according to the Gaza Health Ministry, 51 seeking aid, 603 people reportedly injured. Also, further people dying related to hunger, bringing the total to 197, according to these local officials, 96 of them reportedly being children. Given the pressure that we've seen globally on Israel around the situation in the Gaza Strip, do you think that these figures could bring further questions about a potential military escalation, which reports have suggested Benjamin Netanyahu may be looking towards?
That's certainly something that the Israeli government is going to balance if they're going to increase their military footprint within Gaza and occupy more of Gaza directly. What will be the effect on citizens and the ability to give aid to citizens? So that's definitely going to be something that will go into their thought process. On the other hand, it's clear that for the most part, although international criticism does result in more food aid being let in, when it comes to how Israel conducts the war, the Netanyahu government seems immune to international criticism. So if Netanyahu deems it militarily necessary to expand the military presence in Gaza, I don't think he's going to prioritize international criticism. He's going to proceed with the military course of action. But I also think it's important to mention in this conversation something else, which is that there is the option for Hamas to agree to the ceasefire proposals that Hamas has continually rejected in recent weeks and months. If Hamas would agree to the ceasefire proposals, then citizens would at least be safer during the ceasefire period, and certainly a lot more aid could get in. So we could talk about what Israel should or should not do, but we also have to keep in mind what Hamas is not doing, and they're not agreeing to the ceasefire proposals.
Yes, absolutely, Ross. Of course, as diplomatic efforts to end this conflict stall, with Hamas not agreeing to a ceasefire and talks breaking down, it is important to acknowledge the situation on the ground, but also the diplomacy that is at play and the countries that are trying to end this conflict. As always, Ross, it is a pleasure to have you on the programme with your insights on both of those topics. Thank you ever so much. We move on